My name is Clara Mae Jackson, and until I turned 68, I believed in family above all else. I believed blood was thicker than water, that loyalty was something sacred, and that if you worked hard and did right by people, they'd return the favor. I lived my whole life on that belief, and it nearly destroyed me. I was born and raised on Jackson Acres, a modest patch of farmland just outside a small town in Missouri. The soil ran through my veins. My father taught me how to plant corn before I could spell it, and I milked my first cow before I lost my first tooth. That farm was my home, my history, my everything. After my husband, Roy, died of pancreatic cancer 15 years ago, I kept it running on my own. It was hard, backbreaking work, but it gave me a sense of purpose. I had 2 children, Nathan and Elise, who promised they'd help when I got older, that they'd never let the land go. I believed them. When I started feeling dizzy spells around my 65th birthday, I didn't think much of it. Age catches up to all of us. But Elise insisted I get checked out. She took me to a specialist 3 towns over. Someone she said came, highly recommended. I remember the doctor's office being too clean, too cold. He ran a battery of tests and told me I had earliest stage vascular dementia. Dementia. The word sat in my chest like a boulder. Elise held my hand in the packing lot, her eyes glossy with fake sympathy. "Don't worry, Mama. We're going to take care of everything." That was the last time I felt in control of my life. Within a month, Elise and Nathan arranged for me to sign some papers just to get ahead of things. They told me it was power of attorney standard stuff. "It's so we can handle bills if you get forgetful," Nathan had said, flashing that reassuring smile he'd inherited from his daddy. I trusted them. Of course I did. They were my children. That trust was the beginning of my undoing. At first, the changes were small. Elise started coming around more, moving things. She changed my kitchen layout, told me it was safer. Nathan brought contractors to inspect the barn. I wasn't consulted. I was informed. Then came the visits from social workers. Apparently, my children had filed for state wellness checks. They told the agency I was forgetting to eat, leaving the stove on, wandering outside at night. Thought none of it was true. I was still waking up at 5 a.m. to feed the chickens. I still balanced the checkbook by hand every Friday. But suddenly, I was being treated like a confused child in her own home. When I protested, Elise would sigh and rub my shoulder. "Mama, you don't realize how bad it's getting. That's part of the illness." Every time I tried to assert myself, they used my supposed diagnosis as a weapon against me. One afternoon, I caught a young woman photographing my garden from the road. When I asked what she was doing, she told me she was a real estate appraiser. My stomach dropped. I confronted Elise that evening. She didn't even flinch, just sipped her chamomile tea like it was the most normal thing in the world. "We're just getting things ready, Mama," she said. "It's better if we sell now, while the market's hot. That land is worth more than you realize." "I'm not selling Jackson Acres," I said, my voice shaking. "You don't need all this space," she replied, soft and syrupy. "A cozy place in town will be easier for you. Besides, you won't be alone. We've already arranged a spot at Sweet Haven Assisted Living. It's one of the best." I didn't say a word. I couldn't. The betrayal sank in deeper than any wound I'd ever had. That night, I went to the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed and pulled out the original deed to the farm signed by my father in 1962. My hands trembled as I unfolded the yellowed paper. My name was right there in black ink. Clara Mae Jackson, sole inheritor and owner. But the paper I'd signed at the clinic, the one they said was just power of attorney, it had been more than that, much more. The next morning I walked into the county records office. I knew most of the folks there. They'd known me since I was knee-high. When I asked to see the title to my property, the clerk hesitated. "I'm sorry, Miss Clara," she said softly, "but the deed's been transferred." My ears rang. "Transferred to who?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Elise and Nathan Jefferson, joint owners, filed 2 weeks ago." I stared at the stamped document she laid in front of me. My children had taken everything: my land, my home, my name, and they hadn't even had the decency to tell me to my face. That night, I sat on my porch, staring out over the fields that had raised 3 generations of Jacksons. The moonlight touched every familiar hill and fence post, and I realized something chilling. I wasn't just being pushed off my land, I was being erased. But I wasn't gone yet. The next day, I called the one person I hadn't spoken to in nearly 20 years, Roy's cousin, June Burrow. June had been a paralegal before retiring. and the last time we spoke was at Roy's funeral. She picked up on the first ring. Clara, she said, is everything all right? No, I said, but I'm ready to make it right. June came over that afternoon with her reading glasses, a stack of legal pads, and the kind of righteous fury only a Southern woman in her 70s could muster. We sat at my kitchen table, while I laid everything out, the rushed diagnosis, the vague legal documents, the real estate agents, and the so-called transition to assisted living. June didn't interrupt once. She just took notes and occasionally muttered, "Those damn kids," under her breath. After an hour, she looked up. "Clara, this is elder exploitation. What they've done is not just immoral, it's illegal, and we're going to stop them." I exhaled so deeply I thought my lungs might collapse. For the first time in months, I felt seen. Believed. June reached out and squeezed my hand. "You're not crazy, you're not confused, you're angry, and you've got every right to be." She helped me hire an attorney in Kansas City, someone who specialized in elder abuse and financial fraud. The woman, Miss Leah Sanderson, was younger than I expected, but sharp as a whip and twice as fast. When she reviewed the medical report Elise had arranged, she frowned. "This diagnosis wouldn't hold up in court," she said. "There's no cognitive test, no MRI, just a vague summary and a family history." Elise gave the doctor. He never even interviewed a second opinion. It was a house of cards, and I was ready to blow it down. Leah filed an injunction within the week, halting the sale of the farm. We demanded a full medical reassessment through the state, this time with 2 independent geriatric specialists. I passed every test with flying colors. No signs of dementia, no cognitive impairment, and certainly no reason she should be under anyone's guardianship, one doctor said, shaking his head. "Miss Jackson, you've got a sharper memory than I do." The court date was set for the end of the month. Word traveled fast in our town. At church the following Sunday, the pews practically buzzed with whispers. I'd gone from a poor, confused widow to a woman with fire in her eyes and legal documents in her handbag. Elise showed up at my doorstep 2 days later, her face a mask of forced concern. "Mama, we need to talk," she said, stepping inside without asking. "Then talk," I replied coldly. Standing in front of my kitchen table, the same one she used to eat cookies off when she was 5, her lips trembled slightly, but not from remorse, from anger. "I don't understand why you're doing this. We were trying to help you." "No, Elise," I said, voice steady. "You were helping yourselves. You didn't want to care for me. You wanted to control me and profit off me while you were at it." She flinched. "We never meant to hurt you. You just didn't care if you did." Elise looked around, the kitchen like it was already a memory, like she couldn't quite believe she'd lost control of the narrative. "Do you have any idea what Nathan and I have done for you over the years?" she snapped. "We paid your property taxes, handled your prescriptions, scheduled your doctor appointments. You handled nothing," I interrupted. "You created a problem where there wasn't one, and used it to justify stealing from me." Her voice rose. "You were slipping, Mama. You didn't even remember what day it was last month." I stared at her, stone-faced. "That was the anniversary of your father's death." "I didn't forget the day, Ty. Didn't want to talk to anyone. That's called grief, not dementia." She blinked hard. "I gave up everything for you and Nathan," I said. "This land, this house, my time, my money, my peace of mind, and the moment I needed something back, you both treated me like I was a burden to be shuffled out of sight." "You're twisting this," she hissed. "No, I'm finally untwisting it." She stood there, her eyes darting, lips pressed tight. For a second, I thought she might apologize, but all she did was grab her purse and say, "You'll regret this when the family turns on you." I walked her to the door. I'd rather be alone with my name than surrounded by people who forgot it. Court day came with gray skies and the smell of rain in the air. I wore my late husband's church coat, a deep navy wool piece I'd kept in pristine condition, and June pinned my hair up like she used to when we were girls. The courtroom was small, but packed. Local press had picked up the story. "Retired farmer accuses own children of fraud." The headline read. It stirred something in the community, maybe fear, maybe guilt, maybe recognition. Elise and Nathan sat with their lawyer at the opposite table. Both wore black, like this was a funeral instead of a reckoning. When I took the stand, I told the truth, not just about the papers they'd tricked me into signing, or the fake diagnosis, or the sale attempts. I told them about Jackson, Acres, about my parents, about Roy, about the nights I went to bed hungry so my kids could eat. My love for them blinded me, I said, and they counted on that. I didn't cry. But when Leah presented the evidence, medical reports, financial statements, audio of Nathan pressuring me to move, I watched the courtroom shift. People leaned forward. The judge's eyebrows rose more than once. And when the state doctor testified that I showed no signs of cognitive decline, Elise looked like someone had pulled the floor from beneath her. In the end, the judge voided the deed transfer, revoked the power of attorney, and opened a fraud investigation into both my children. And just like that, Jackson Acres was mine again. The reporters waited outside the courthouse, but I didn't speak to them. I didn't need to. The truth had already been said where it mattered. Nathan left town a week later. No apology, no goodbye. Just disappeared. I heard he moved to Texas, started selling insurance. Elise, on the other hand, stayed for a while. She tried to save face at church, showing up with forced smiles and hollow hugs. But people knew. Small towns remember betrayal longer than they remember potlucks. I wasn't interested in revenge. Not really. What I wanted, what I needed was my name back, my land, my dignity, and I got all three. A month later, I stood barefoot in the front pasture, early morning sun warming my face. For the first time in years, the farm was quiet in the way it used to be. Not abandoned, not lonely, just peaceful. I planted a new apple tree near the fence where Roy used to lean and drink coffee. June helped me paint the barn door red again. My neighbor, Mr. Levins from 2 fields over, brought his grandson to help with the cattle. That boy had strong arms and a good heart, and he called me Miss Clara without a hint of pity. One evening, Leah the attorney came by for supper. We talked for hours. She told me I ought to write a book, that folks needed to hear stories like mine. Maybe one day, I said. Right now, I just want to remember who I am. 6 months later, I did something I never thought I'd do. At 68 years old, I opened my land to the community. Every Saturday morning, I host what we call Porch Circle. Folks gather on the old wraparound porch. Veterans, widows, farmers, teachers, even a few teens looking for something real. We drink coffee, eat fresh cornbread, and talk about the hard stuff, the real stuff. Some weeks, someone brings a guitar. Some weeks, someone brings tears. But every week, someone leaves lighter. One woman, Marjorie, told me her nephew tried the same thing. Elise and Nathan did, slowly isolating her, taking over her checkbook, even hiding her mail. She said my story gave her the courage to speak up. That's when I realized this whole mess wasn't just about me. It was about what happens when people forget that elders are not just burdens to carry or problems to solve. We're the roots holding this soil together. And when someone tries to bury us, they forget we are seeds. Now, every time I step out onto Jackson Acres, I know 2 things for certain. 1, no one will ever steal my name again. And 2, I may be old, but I'm not done growing. So, if you're hearing my story now, maybe you're sipping tea in your kitchen, or watching from a city apartment miles away, I want you to ask yourself something. What would you do if your family betrayed you? And more importantly, what would you do to reclaim your power? Thank you for listening. And if this story moved something in you, share it, because someone out there needs to know it's never too late to take your life back.